I've played tons of arcade games, and up until recently, I haven't really kept track of the ones that I've played. While I remember some of the games I've played through my gaming journey in the arcade and on Twitch, I do suffer from PTSD and borderline personality disorder, and if I don't write something down, I tend to forget it. Thanks, Air Force, appreciate it. A vast majority of these games that will be talked about today will be Konami-centric, because that's the point where I began writing down which arcade titles I've played. These games are so bad, they made me want to high dive into a wood chipper. Now, these aren't the worst that I've played. They're simply 10 games that made me feel like I could have spent my $5 on something that was slightly better. Early arcade games are wild to me because they stem from an era of creativity. Companies had to come up with novel ideas that would pave the way for genres that would inevitably spawn franchises, but in that same era of creativity, it was kind of the Wild West when it came to copyrights. Some companies took creative inspiration from other arcade titles. Think of it as copying off your friend's homework, but changing the answers a little bit so that the teacher doesn't catch on. Then you have Konami, who kicks you in the dick, picks you up, slams you into a locker, punches you in the mouth, steals your paper, and changes the name. That's what Konami did with Space King 1 and 2. It's a blatant ripoff, and guess what? Other companies did it as well. Irem, the folks who made Moon Patrol, made IPM Invaders, and Data East, the folks who made Burger Time, did a clone as well. Because of this blatant copyright infringement, I find it to be pretty disrespectful, so just play the original Space Invaders. Dino Rex is what happens when you take a nonsensical lucid dream and create a video game out of it. In 1992, Street Fighter II opened the floodgates for tournament fighters in the arcades, and it was kind of a mandatory genre if you wanted to make money, and many companies tried. Some of them failed. Badly. Taito decided to make oversized, digitized sprites of dinosaurs duking it out mano a mano, and while on paper, it sounds cool, in execution, it was horrible. These controls are dreadful. The difficulty stems from horrible programming, and the overall visual effect of the game is just humorous. This came out a few years before Atari's Primal Rage, but at least Atari figured it out. If you want to genuinely have a bad time while laughing the entire time, play Dino Rex. Now, I've never played Gauntlet in the arcades. I do recall seeing them growing up, but I never played it. I do, however, understand the core tenets of Gauntlet, so I know the tropes that are applicable to the franchise. This is Konami's take on Gauntlet, and if Gauntlet plays anything like Dark Adventure, I'm not going to make it a priority to touch a Gauntlet game. Now, Konami did try to tie a plot to this, kind of like a, little knot around the finger. Supposedly, an archaeologist finds a coffin that belongs to a demon, and his dumbass opens the coffin during a press conference, and hell breaks loose. Literally. Dr. Condor, Labrina, and Zorlok get teleported to the world of the devil, and you have to fight your way out. Again, I've never played Gauntlet, but in Dark Adventure, you not only have to contend with staying alive, you have to contend with time. Time goes by very quickly, and assuming that the game was 25 cents a credit, I spent roughly $20 just to get 6 levels in. I love Gradius, and I've played plenty of games in the franchise, but Gradius 2 in the arcades is a horrible time. This game is exceptionally difficult, and you get 3 lives per 1 credit. That means if you die 3 times, that's it. Game over. No continues. Now, there is another version, Vulcan Venture, which has a continue option, which is great, right? No. Vulcan Venture will 100% checkpoint you in a non-survivable situation, which is kind of obnoxious to me. The last level has these tiles that fall rapidly from the roof, and if you die, you lose all of your power-ups, which means you're back to base speed 1. You cannot dodge these tiles. There is no safe space to do so. Konami in the arcade has a haunting reputation for games that aren't worth your money, and if you do want to play Gradius 2, I would suggest the home console options available. This is one of the more infamous games in the Castlevania franchise. Haunted Castle is essentially a unique, novel Castlevania entry that plays a lot like Ghosts and Goblins if you had a massive character that had an unfathomably large hitbox with the inherent inability to hit a single enemy. Add in some shoddy jump arches and the fact that Konami decided after 3 continues you just need to restart the game, and that if you die once, it's game over. So, too long didn't read it, you can only take a few hits, with 1 life per credit, and if you continue 3 times, back to the beginning. Konami is notorious for this. There's a few ways that they tended to do it, too. The most common method is that after a certain amount of credits, they just hard game you over. Contra, Black Panther, Devastator, Batlantis, they all did this. Some other Konami games will just give you hard game overs after a certain amount of progress, which is incredibly annoying. To go through 50% of a game thinking that you can continue as long as you have the money, and then you get hard gamed over? Assholes. This is definitely the black sheep in the Castlevania franchise, and if you do want to try it on your own, I suggest save stating. You must play a perfect game to beat this. Now, I love Russian Attack on the NES, but Russian Attack in the arcades is a massive coin eater to the point where it was unfun to me. Imagine a single Green Beret going into a prison camp or a base with only a knife. That's all you get, a single knife. Now, you can use guns, you get them occasionally, and with it, 3 shots. After 3 shots, it's gone forever. So, what this feels like to me is Kung Fu with platforms. You're running to the right, poking enemies that never stop coming and will overwhelm you while dealing with some programming issues, like a long attack cycle that locks the orientation that you're facing. Now, the problems I had with the arcade game are inevitably fixed in the NES, and I do suggest that you check out the NES version because it's just as difficult, but it is incredibly fun. It's not often that I quote examples of a NES game being better than the arcade entry, so enjoy that. I love fighting games, like a lot. In the arcade, that was what I spent most of my money on if I wasn't playing a light gun game. Some are better than others. We talked about Dino Rex today and how clunky and awkward it was, so why not add another clunky and awkward fighting game, Galactic Warriors? Now, this game is a mech combat game, and I understand that robots are big and clunky, but goddamn, these robots are clunky. The controls are hard to get into, and the game itself is just incredibly slow. It reminds me a lot of Heavy Nova on the Genesis, off-putting one-on-one fights with you floating aimlessly around the screen and getting bounced around from the most basic hit from the enemy. Luckily, everything the enemy does to you, you can also do to them, but if you want to get good at this game, it takes a lot of practice and brain dumping everything and anything that you know about fighting games. This game is the inspiration for Bionic Commando, and in some ways you can see where that inspiration came from. In the game we play as an explorer simply trying to get to a phoenix so we can grab onto its tail. That's it. How do we do it? We shoot ropes that allow us to climb up to the next platform. Along the way we dodge dinosaurs, cavemen, and pterodactyls dropping stones on us. We are a helpless protagonist, but we are able to use our flashlight to blind them, kind of like the killer in Dead by Daylight. Now, my chief complaint for this game is the central element itself. Trying to line up the proper angle for the zipline gun is incredibly difficult and frustrating, and the game itself is only 5 levels before it starts looping, a product of its time I'm sure, but this game wasn't fun to me. Honestly, I'd rather play Bionic Commando because in some ways it took the guesswork out of what angle we needed to get to the next platform, even in the arcades.
The Empire, Bigfoot Joe. Here we go.
Wrestling games are interesting because for the longest time, video game developers didn't know how to handle it. The elements of a good wrestling game just weren't there. A vast majority of the time, in the main event, you'll be kicking people in the stomach or punching them. Occasionally, if you figure out the button combination, you can Irish whip them. If you want to pin them, good luck, because the tag team partner will always come and break the pin. The computer will beat the shit out of you, and the commentary, while appreciated, gets old rather quickly. If you manage to beat a match, you'll probably look like Bigfoot Joe, just confused as hell on how you got that far. Now, this isn't the worst wrestling game I've played in the arcades, but it's certainly not one of the best. The final game on our list today is Super Basketball. Now, this game is a mixed bag, and that bag is full of angry raccoons, black mambas, and a single honey badger. This is a bag of hatred. Super Basketball, as the title implies, is a basketball game, but it's one that's done horribly. Double Dribble in the arcade wasn't that bad. Janky, yes, but bad? Not at all. Super Basketball? Horrible! For starters, they made the sound of the basketball dribble sound like a failing speaker cable. They made the opponents have dance parties in the paint, and the AI does whatever it wants. Oh, and if you throw a basketball, which is, one of the core tenets of basketball, the amount of time it takes for the ball to make it to the hoop, it's like watching a space shuttle take off. If you want to score in this game, it's easier to just dunk, but good luck with that because the opposing team is so far up your ass that if you move, you get a charging penalty. It's just a really bad basketball game. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you like what you saw, hit that thumbs up. It helps with the visibility. Hit that subscribe button too. It's looking awfully lonely, and I'd love to have you along on my gaming journey that I've kind of made into a habit here. Also, down in the comment section below, tell me what games you didn't like in the arcades, because honestly, I think it'd be fun to make a video based on your suggestions. From my family to your family, good energy, good vibes, Fortifier out.